whilst also posting private dock signage. This action has prevented Mr. Paris and others from gaining access to their moorings. She has prevented access to his moorings by securing a boat to the dock, which remains attached to the dock continuously, 24 hours per day. Mr. Paris indicated that the moorings in question have not been assessed for many years. Moreover, the owner of the Salt Haven property has left no room for emergency access to the dock, as required by the police service many years ago. Mr. Paris indicated that there are several others who have not had access to their moorings as well. Mr. Paris had reached out to the former owners of the property who confirmed the dock in question was not a part of the sale of the Salt Haven property. Mr. Paris states that the government placed a life-saving ring on the dock many years ago, which would not have been the case if the dock were privately owned. Mr. Paris has asked that the Commission look into the matter as it affects his moorings at the western end of the dock. Furthermore, he asserts that the actions of the owner of the Salt Haven property affects the dock by other fishermen and members of the community. It's signed James Paris.
Thank you, sir. Now, in support of the submission made by the applicant, are there any documents attached to the file, specifically any plans or maps?
There are, my lord.
That not yet. Grave indulgence. Oh, what is that, sir? Is that one of the documents that was handed to you?
This appears to be a plot plan of Salt Haven and the adjacent properties.
And is that one of the documents which was handed to you?
Yes, my lord.
And I said that plan be tender admitted as exhibit CA2, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any particular identifying mark on the plan?
This is what,
Just for the record.
Sure. Please go ahead, Mr.
Yes, my lord. There is the premise labeled Salt Haven is in fact the premise in question, and the public wharf and the access road can be seen on the right-hand side as you look at your map, and it's labeled public wharf. The premise Salt Haven is likewise labeled, which is immediately next to it.
So if we put it as plan tendered, shows Salt Haven and the public
Dock.
the public dock
Access road.
and access road. tendered and entered as Exhibit CA2.
The document is now being projected on the screen. No, sir. What do you have there?
This is referred to as a schedule at the top of Lot B. And this,
Just up. So what do you have there, sir?
this is a document described as a schedule. There are two entries here. One is called Lot B and the other Lot A.
How many pages does that document comprise of?
1 page.
I'd ask that that document be tendered as Exhibit C A3, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
What next do you have there, sir?
This appears to be a receipt from the Department of Public Lands and Buildings, and the receipt is for $18.
And that receipt is from here.
Could you just repeat for Madam Chair, the receipt, who the receipt is from, or it was generated?
The Department of Public Lands and Buildings from the Ministry of Government Estates and Information Services.
Thank you.
That's that document be tendered admitted as Exhibit CA4.
It's entered as Exhibit CA4.
What next do you have there, sir?
A document here with what appears to be a sign and the name Salt Haven, underneath of which is the words private dock, underneath of which is the words no trespassing.
And your understanding is what does that represent?
This represents the signage that is affixed to the side of the house called Salt Haven at Devonshire Dock.
And that is a photograph taken of the said signage.
It is, my lord.
I'd ask that be tendered and admitted as Exhibit CA5. The document which I'm proposing to ask Madam Chair to enter as an Exhibit CA5, it says report and summary of the evidence. How many pages does the report comprise, sir?
Report and summary.
As projected on the screen, Madam Chair.
So that is our CA5.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The note that I have, Salt Haven, private dock, no trespassing, sign, which represents no trespassing, which represents a sign on the side of the house, Salt Haven.
I think he said signage, Madam Chair.
Signage. Signage. Okay. It's a signage on the house of, it's called Salt Haven?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've entered it as CA5.
Thank you. Craven. Now, what do you have there, sir?
This is described as introduction and summary of claim.
Thank you. And your understanding is that all of these documents formed a part of the file which had been prepared by the investigator, Ms. Chambers.
Yes, my lord.
Now, in respect of that document which you refer to as a summary, could you kindly, well, I'd ask first for it to be attended as exhibit CA6, and if the application is so given, I'd ask that the document be read into evidence.
Yes, this document introduction summary is entered as CA6.
We're going through the others afterwards. You could just read that document for us, please.
This begins, it's called Introduction and Summary of Claim. By an application dated May 20th, 2020, bracket application number COIHLL 201900, close bracket. Messrs. James Paris, Roger Paris, and Noel Paris submitted an application to the Commission of Inquiry. The synopsis of the application, which was signed by Mr. James Paris, solely reads as follows. Mr. Paris, a fisherman, has paid for moorings at the Devonshire dock that is adjacent to a property named Salt Haven. Mr. Paris pays $181 a year per mooring, totaling $362 to the Ministry of Public Works for 2 moorings. The owner of Salt Haven has claimed that the dock in question belongs to her and has prevented the use of the government-owned dock to the general public, whilst also posting private dock signage. These actions have prevented Mr. Paris and others from gaining access to their moorings. She has prevented access to his moorings by securing a boat to the dock, which remains attached to the dock continuously 24 hours per day. Mr. Paris indicated that the moorings in question have not been assessed for many years. Moreover, the owner of the Salt Haven property has left no room for emergency access to the dock as required by the police service many years ago. Mr. Paris indicated that there are several others who have not had access to their moorings as well. Mr. Paris has reached out to the former owners of the property who confirmed the dock in question was not a part of the sale of the Salt Haven property. Mr. Paris states that the government placed a life-saving ring on the dock many years ago, which would not have been the case if the dock were privately owned. Mr. Paris has asked the Commission look into this matter as it affects his moorings at the western end of the dock. Furthermore, he asserts that the actions of the owner of the Salt Haven property affects the dock by other fishermen and members of the community. The documents submitted consist of 1, a copy of the schedule, i.e. legal description of the property Salt Haven, and an adjoining parcel of land marked COIHLL 2019001JP002. 2, a plot plan of Salt Haven and surrounding properties based on a survey of T. Gadet dated 31st December 1976, marked COIHLL 2019001 JP003. And 3, a Ministry of Public Works receipt in the amount of $18 for photocopies marked COI HLL 2019001 JP004. Although the application was submitted in the names of 3 Messrs. Paris, all contact has been with Mr. James Paris by telephone only. Mr. Paris, a fisherman of many years, declined invitation to meet on the site at Devonshire Dock or in office in order to give a formal statement. He has indicated that while several people, including other fishermen, those who frequent Devonshire Dock, are aware of his inquiries into ownership of the dock due to safety concerns, he would prefer to stay in the background as far as possible. The objective expressed by Mr. Paris is to once again feel free to use the dock. For ease of reference, henceforth, the dock in question will be referred to as the Western Dock, in order to distinguish it from the greater area of Devonshire Dock, which includes a larger Eastern Dock area.
Thank you. Now, what other documents do you have there, sir?
I have a further document. It's entitled Further Information Received from Mr. Paris.
And that document is how many pages, sir?
2 pages.
And just to be clear, none of these documents are, well, the CA1 was signed, but the other documents are unsigned. Is that correct?
That's correct, Lord.
Okay. In respect of the further information received from Mr. Paris, is that how many pages does that comprise of?
2 pages.
I'd ask that those 2 pages, Madam Chair, be tendered admitted as exhibit CA7, those 2 pages.
Very well. The additional 2 pages entered as CA7
Thank you.
exhibit.
Will you please go ahead, read them, sir.
Further information received from Mr. Paris. During various conversations held with Mr. Paris, the following was stated by him. In years past, he, along with other fishermen, had free use of the entire Devonshire Dock. He further stated that evidence of his uses was contained in the book Shark Bait, authored by Mr. Sean O'Connell, whom he described as a math teacher at the Bermuda College, which contained several photographs of him bringing in sharks. It is only during the ownership of the current owner, whose name he did not know, that a sign had been erected claiming the Western Dock as private property, although he could not recall the precise wording of the sign. The boat formerly tied up at the Western Dock, which prevented access by other boats, burned at about 3 a.m. on the morning of the 2nd of August, 2020. He advised that police had attended the scene, but he had no additional details to provide, and one expressed reason for his reluctance to visit the Western Dock is concern that he might be falsely accused of involvement in the burning of this boat. In an attempt to resolve the issue, he has visited the Land Title Registry Office and also spoken with Mr. Conway of the Department of Public Lands and Buildings, who advised him that the Western Dock is a public one. He has also been told that the owner has indicated that she has paperwork to prove that she owns the Western Dock, although he is not aware that any such paperwork has ever been provided. During his most recent telephone call in October, Mr. Paris suggested that this be followed up with Mr. Conway. During a conversation with Minister Robin at a fisheries meeting, date unknown, Mr. Paris says he was told that the Western Dock was ceded to the government years ago. During an October 2020 telephone call conversation, Mr. Paris stated that there had been some activity at the Western Dock in recent weeks, and he therefore wondered if the position taken by the owners of Salthaven may have altered. This continues research conducted and evidence gathered. The first step was to establish the identity of the current owners of Salthaven. Initial research identified a Miss Debbie De Silva as being associated with the property, and the current parliamentary register confirms Ms. De Silva's address as being Salthaven, 21 North Shore Road, Devonshire, DV 05.
I just paused there, Madam Chair. I just asked that at this stage, I'd ask that through junior counsel that formal notice, adverse notice is given to Miss Debbie De Silva, and if required, and as the evidence unfolds, we'll hear of any other person who holds jointly, that those persons could indicate if they wish to have standing and if they wish to be heard in respect of this matter.
And the name of the lady?
I have it as Debbie De Silva,
Debbie?
as appears on the screen,
Okay.
Madam. Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair.
I've made the order in terms of your request that the adverse notice be sent to Mrs. or Miss Debbie De Silva.
And the address appears on your screen, Madam Chair.
Very well. That's addressed. What's the address?
Salt Haven,
Salt Haven,
21 North Shore Road, Devonshire, DV 05.
DV05.
Yes,
I'll just read the address
Sorry.
so that it can be on the record. So it's being sent to Miss Debbie De Silva at Salt Haven, 21 North Shore Road, Devonshire, DV 05.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Please continue, sir.
2. A copy of a transfer notice dated 15th October 2009 was obtained from the Land Title Registry Office. The transfer notice records the sale by conveyance of Salt Haven together with an adjoining property on September 30th, 2009. The transferor, vendor listed as Ruth Ann Winifred Dill Autubridge, and the transferees purchases listed are Jerzinho Jer Romero Robinson and Deborah Naomi De Silva.
I just pause there. Could I just ask that I think I was using the proper Christian name, maybe Deborah. I think the name that appears above as Debbie may just have been a shortened version of the Christian name. Could I kindly ask that we use the names of the purchasers, Madam Chair? I ask for that amendment to your record because properly speaking, it ought to be served on the transferees, the purchasers as appears in this report, Madam Chair.
that would be Deborah,
And it's Deborah.
That is so, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Deborah Naomi De Silva.
So, Mr. Junior Counsel, you make that note accordingly, please. I made it. Sorry.
Joyce. Jointly is sufficient, Madam Chair. But it will be sent to at the listed address that is stated in paragraph 1.
Quite. But usually we try to serve it personally. Is that correct, Counsel? Sure, right. And so we will try that. If in fact that doesn't yield success, we will endeavor to locate her.
Very well, Madam. May the witness continue reading the document, Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you.
You continue the third paragraph.
Inquiries were made at the Land Title Registry Office as to whether Devonshire Dock was registered as government property or at all, and the reply was that it was not registered. The Land Title Registry has advised that any further queries, if needed, as to the deeds possibly held by government ought to be directed to the Department of Lands and Buildings. A copy of the transfer notice, together with its attachments, schedule and deed plan, is attached to Appendix 1. The schedule describes Salthaven as being Lot B on the plan, and of particular relevance is that it describes the property as being bounded easterly by a right-of-way or roadway reading in a northerly direction from the North Shore Public Road to the public wharf at Devonshire Dock. The schedule therefore clearly demonstrates that the right-of-way or roadway leading to the public wharf is outside of the bounds of the Salthaven property and was not included in the property conveyed. The deed plan shows Salthaven delineated and outlined in red, and it is evident that the property does not include either the roadway leading to the western dock or the western dock itself, which is identified on the plan as public wharf. The plan therefore also clearly demonstrates that the right-of-way or roadway leading to the public wharf is outside the bounds of the Salthaven property and was not included in the property conveyed. The Bermuda National Trust book, Bermuda's Architectural Heritage Series, Devonshire, was searched, and references to Salthaven and Devonshire Dock found on the same pages. Although the text does not provide evidence as to whether or not the western dock is public, it could be said that the photos are suggestive of the dock being a public one. Copies of relevant pages are found at Appendix 2. As research found that Salthaven was a listed building, inquiries were made with the Department of Planning in order to ascertain how the property was described when listed. Copies of relevant pages obtained from the said department are found at Appendix 3, and it is evident that there is no mention of the western dock as forming part of the property. On 4th October 2020, the investigator, accompanied by a fellow investigator, Leonie Junas, paid a site visit to the Devonshire Dock primarily to view and photograph the sign affixed to Salthaven. Conversation was had with the men congregated at Devonshire Dock in the area leading to the eastern dock. Of particular note is that one who said that he was 60 years old recalled using the western dock when he was a boy, and indicated that it was widely and publicly used at that time. Another man was emphatic that even if the western dock had been public at one time, it was now private and formed part of Salthaven, although he had no knowledge as to how or when such privatization would have occurred. Although all evidence pointed to the western dock being public, it was decided prudent to make contact with Mrs. Ruth Ann Autubridge, the previous owner of Salthaven. On 9th October 2020, the investigator met with Mrs. Autubridge and a witness statement taken. A copy of the final statement, signed and dated 28th October 2020, is attached to as Appendix 4. As can be seen, Mrs. Autubridge's statement confirms that the western dock is public and was not included in the 2009 sale of Salthaven. Based on Mrs. Autubridge's statement that she had acquired Salthaven by gift, a search was carried out for details of this transfer, and records at the Land Title Registry Office show that this transfer of property took place on 27th of March 1978. The first schedule to the deed of voluntary conveyance describes the eastern boundary of Salthaven in the same manner as in the 2009 conveyance to the current owners, and therefore clearly shows that the right-of-way or roadway leading to the public wharf is outside of the bounds of the Salthaven property and not included in the property conveyed to Mrs. Autubridge.
Please proceed. The conclusion that
I beg your pardon, sorry. Conclusion. Where are you?
that maybe a third page that ought properly to. On that page, take down. No, take down that one. Thank you. You're not seeing that page.
No, sir, I don't.
But let's move on to the other documents. Firstly, you referred to reference was made in the exhibit CA7 to a Devonshire magazine. Do you have that there, sir?
I do, sir.
How many pages does it comprise of?
Appears to be 2 pages, sir.
Okay. I just asked that document, which is projected on the screen, which is referred to as Devonshire. Reference was made to it in CA7 as being found at Appendix 2. I'm just asking that document be tendered and admitted as Exhibit CA8.
So it's entitled,
Thank you.
it's entitled Bermuda Architectural Heritage
Series.
Series.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Adams, you also mentioned that there is a signed statement of Mrs. Autubridge. Do you have that there with you?
I do, sir.
How many pages does it comprise, sir?
2 pages.
And what's the date on the document?
It is dated the 28th day of October, the 28th of October, 2020.
And it's signed, sir?
It is, sir.
I'd ask that document respectfully, Madam Chair, be tendered and admitted as Exhibit CA9, and I ask the witness to read it if the application is granted.
And it's called, assist me please, counsel. It's a signed statement from,
It is from Ruth and Winifred Dill, Autubridge. It is presently projected on the screen for ease of reference, Madam Chair.
okay. Winifred Dill, Autubridge.
Just ask that the cell phone number we should have blocked that out.
Okay. And
Could I just
65.
ask you just to move up to the top of the document so that's not projected right now? Thank you.
All I'm writing for the notes is the signed statement from Ruth and Winifred Dill, Outerbridge of 65 Middle Road, entered as Exhibit CA9.
Could I ask you to read that statement for me, sir?
This is a statement of Ruth Ann Winifred Dill Autubridge. My name is Ruth Ann Winifred Dill Autubridge. I am the former owner of the property known as Salthaven in Devonshire. I believe it was in 1977 that I acquired the property. It was gifted to me by my great aunt Ruth Dill Crockett, and I owned it from then until it was sold to Deborah De Silva and her son Jerzino Robinson. I lived at the property from 1979 to 1985, and from then it was rented out until we sold it. During his lifetime, my great-grandfather, Colonel Thomas Dill, owned Salthaven, Newbold Place, Sunridge Port, and Seabright, all located on North Shore roads surrounding the Devonshire Dock, Bay, and Docks, which he also owned. At some point during his lifetime, it is believed in 1918 or so, a wall was built to separate. Around that time, he gave the dock, now known as Devonshire Dock, to the government for public use. He had noticed that there was nowhere along the North Shore for fishermen to keep their boats and sell their fish, etc. During the years I lived at Salthaven, both the little dock next to the Salthaven and the large dock were very well used, and both fishermen and people waiting for the boats to come in would use it, among other sightseers, swimmers, etc. Our kitchen window opened onto the dock, and we would chat through the window with the fishermen. My husband remembers that on more than one occasion, we would have an extension cord passed through the window to plug in so that fishermen could have light when they came in after dark with their catch. There was also a public dock to the west of Salt Haven, and I remember that we would have children run across the rocks in front of our house to reach the small dock. This eventually got a bit much, and we put something up to discourage it, but never blocked access to the little dock itself, which could be accessed from the road. It was a wonderful community, although from time to time there were incidents, but I never had a problem with anybody in the area, never had any break-ins. I remember even coming home to find shark hash on my doorstep. At one point years ago, I received a letter saying that my land tax had been increased in order to include the small dock. Once I was able to prove that the dock was not part of our property, but was in fact owned by the government, the matter was dropped. When Salt Haven was sold, there was an agent involved, Coldwell Banker. I have never met the purchasers myself, although my husband has. It is very clear from the deeds that the property sold did not include the little dock. Last October 2019, I was driving past the dock and saw the sign saying that the small dock was private and owned by Salt Haven. I was puzzled, surprised, and dismayed. I later discussed it with my friend Roger Paris and his uncle, Mr. Jimmy Paris, who is one of the fishermen I knew when I was living at Salt Haven. Mr. Jimmy Paris used the dock and kept his boat in the bay for decades. None of us could understand how the current owner could come to the conclusion that the dock was part of the house. The drawing attached to the dock, the deeds, clearly shows it as public property.
And the statement is signed.
It is, my lord.
Thank you. So do you have anything else there that was provided to you in with the file?
This appears to be a document described as listed building record sheet.
And how many pages is it?
1 page, my lord.
I'd ask that document be tendered and admitted. I crave indulgence. I believe earlier the evidence.
Do we call it a listed building record sheet?
We would, Madam Chair, but I crave indulgence. Earlier, the witness had read from another document and evidence had been given that this document was one of a number of documents which had been received, which was being produced in aid, or just listed as Appendix 3. It was in the report from the investigator. I'd ask that it is made Exhibit CA 10, Madam Chair, listed building record sheet.
Did you say also it was referred to in the report?
It was, Madam Chair.
And the report was entered as?
It was Exhibit CA 5, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Could I just ask you to read into the record, Mr. Adams, the CA 10 for us, please?
Right. I just have it here as listed building record sheet exhibited as CA 10, but previously produced in the report CA 5.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Could you read the document?
Which one is that, sir?
The listed building record sheet.
Yes.
One you just referred to.
Yes. The listed building record sheet, the reference number is DV045. Proposed grade is 3. The OS sheet is 3/11. What seems to be the assessment number is 040826015. The address is Salt Haven, 21 North Shore Road, Devonshire, DV05. The owner listed here is Ruth Ann Autubridge. besides the word probable period, there is the following: L180-E19C and 20C. Description and historic associations. The western section of Salthaven is a simple two-story, nearly symmetrical building with a massive chimney decorated with string course molding. The one-story hipped roof cottage with chimney on the east side also appears in a Nelson sketch circa 1833. The heavy stone two-story additions north and south, and the square two-story addition with stone railing on the top west side were all put on during the 20th century. It seems that Salthaven was originally two fishermen's cottages which were subsequently joined together. The verandas to the north and south have been added since the First World War. It is understood that under the floor of the smaller of the two cottages, there is a fish tank, now covered by tiles. The roof over the western part of the house was replaced with an SKB roof following extensive damage caused by Hurricane Emily in 1987.
Thank you very much. Those are the questions that I have for. Go ahead.
So I did find the page entitled Conclusion, which I had
Good.
misplaced there.
Okay. That page properly, it Craven Douglas. We're reading on. Madam Chair, the document which has as its heading conclusion, I'd ask that it be tendered admitted as CA6A. The witness had been reading from CA6, but a third page which ought properly to be with it had been misplaced. I'd ask that the document, the heading CA, that
6A.
conclusion, it is tendered admitted.
So would I call it, CA6 is the introduction and summary claim.
So I'm asking for it to be
That's
called
somewhat
6A.
attached to that.
Yes, madam, but just
Okay,
for
very well.
clarity, I'd ask to be,
I'll just say in conclusion, CA6A read,
thank you,
which is an addendum, I could call it a CA6.
thank you. I just asked for it to be read into the record, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, please.
Conclusion. Facts including oral and documentary evidence has established that the Western Dock was not included in the 2009 sale of Salthaven and the adjoining property, and indeed could not have been, as Mrs. Autubridge would have had no power to convey. Without a deed in their name, the current owners would have no ability to properly say that they own the Western Dock, as they have not occupied the property long enough to have acquired it through adverse possession. Following the suggestion of Mr. Parrish to contact the Department of Public Works and Buildings and that of the Land Title Registry Office to contact that department for any additional queries on deeds held, a visit was made. A brief discussion was held with Estates Surveyor, Ms. Caroline Blackburn, who confirmed that the status of the dock as public and indicated that her department was aware of the sign affixed to Salthaven. Although understandably, Ms. Blackburn was reluctant to say more, perhaps concerned about confidentiality. The distinct impression given was that they were handling things. The Commission may therefore wish to consider liaison with that department before serving adverse notice on the owners of Salthaven. Ms. De Silva has not been contacted by the investigator, thus the basis for her belief is unknown. The view taken is that if the Commission still considers appropriate to serve an adverse notice on Mr. Silva would have the opportunity to provide her evidence, if any, at that time. It is reputed that public rights and access to various land in Bermuda has been lost over the years. For example, access to tribe roads and water frontage, although the veracity of such claims is outside the scope of this report. The assertion that the Western Dock is private and the ready acceptance of this assertion without complaint by some users of the Devonshire Dock, in the opinion of the investigator, demonstrates how public rights could have quite easily been lost in the past and perhaps ought to be examined in future. One suggestion that the Commission may wish to make to help prevent such claims in future is for appropriate signage to be installed at all properties under government ownership. This report and summary of evidence submitted by investigator Judith Chambers on the 5th of November 2020.
Thank you. Craven. The document appearing on the screen, do you have a copy of that in your plan? No.
No, sir, I do not.
Well, I have no further questions at this time. I'll just have to.
Sir, I do have it here in the report.
And how many pages does it comprise of, sir?
One page, my lord.
I'd ask that the document, which is headed transfer notice, appendix 1, I'd ask that it be tendered and admitted as exhibit CA11.
Go ahead, counsel. I have marked as exhibit CA11, the transfer notice appendix 1.
Thank you. Please could you read that document into the record, Mr. Adams? Thank you.
This is entitled Transfer Notice. It says, to the Register General, in accordance with the requirements of the Register General Recording of Documents Act 1955, and as the attorneys for the parties concerned, we hereby give you notice that the persons hereinafter mentioned became entitled to an interest in the parcel of land hereinafter described. Date is September 30th, 2009. Date sanctioned, not applicable. Name of transferees, Jairzinho Jair Romero Robinson and Deborah Naomi De Silva. Address of transferees, 21 North Shore Road, Devonshire, DV05. Nationality Bermudian. Date of birth, over 21. Occupation unknown. Nature of interest acquired. Joint tenants in fee simple. Mode of acquisition, conveyance. Full name of person from whom acquired. Ruth and Winifred Dill, Autubridge. Description of land per schedule hereto annexed. Assessment number 040826015. Purchase price $750,000. Dated this 15th day of October 2009. Cox, Hallett, Wilkinson, Hamilton, Bermuda.
Thank you very much. I have nothing further at this time, Madam Chair.
Very well, I'll ask commissioners if they have any questions. Any questions? No, nothing, miss, nothing, anything, nothing, anything? Go ahead, please.
I just asked that I could offer the caveat that Chief Investigator was not the investigator. He is merely here to, because it has not been reasonable or practicable for the investigator to be here. I just ask that if questions are posed to him, that's considered.
Thank you, Council. Morning, Mr. Adams.
Morning, sir.
I'm just, and yielding to Council's last comment. Is there any evidence that the current owner has engaged in a matter of resolution to this situation at all?
I am not aware of any.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning. I have two questions. The first one I think is probably addressed to the chair via council. There is reference to a few civil servants in the report. It seems prudent to me that we have a representative from government, either the civil servants named or our learned friend from the Attorney General's chamber. Is that something that can be done?
It certainly can be done. I did not get the impression from I didn't form the opinion from my reading that there is any objection and or legal issue that would arise with any government entity, and especially based on the claim, that certainly has not been the position of the claimant. He has spoken to a legal right which he previously had, which no longer exists by virtue of purchase of property by someone. But if it is something that is required and the persons are required to come here to speak to the very thing that they have done, which the documents speak to, then if it is so requested, then it shall be done.
Thank you. I have one more question. Inspector Adams, I know you weren't the researcher on this case, but are you aware, and I didn't see it in the report, did the fishermen, had the police called on them for trespass, or have they just seen the sign and not gone over there?
I am not aware that they were challenged by the police. My impression from reading through the reports is that they ceased to make use of that area because of the sign.
Thank you for that clarity.
Council, I'm thinking aloud. Once notice is served on Mrs. Deborah De Silva, based on her response, if there is any issue, we could serve notice on the AG at that time.
That can be done, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
I'm just thinking aloud. It
Thank
may or may not arise.
Yes.
If there are no further questions, then is that the end of this matter, Council?
The end of this matter.
For now.
For now, Madam Chair.
Anything else? Any other?
No, those are the matters that we have for today, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Officer Adams, for
Yes, ma'am.
coming in and assisting us.
Thank you.
Well, if that's the position, then. You don't have your mic, so I can't hear you. Really? But perhaps you could just ask council to articulate what it is you're trying to, what it is you're saying. We could deal with,
It's after.
you know, administratively, certainly.
Thank you.
So given the fact that we do not have any other matters listed today, and based on our assessment of the outstanding files that we have, but they're not ready to be heard, I take the position that we should adjourn now and to the next tranche of hearings, which will be in January. I don't know if commissioners or council has anything to say.
Nothing, Madam
To
Chair.
that.
Nothing to add.
Very well. Therefore, this inquiry stands adjourned to January 2021, and the date and the place for continuation will be advised in due course.
Very well, Madam Chair.
Thank you.